Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and today we're going to have a look at the GFS, the SMWF, the GM models at the weather for the next couple of weeks. Now, I'm currently looking at the NAO observed and forecast, so that's the North Atlantic oscillation. So when it's positive, it means low pressure is moving through the North Atlantic, and when it is negative, it means that there's more high pressure in the North Atlantic. Now, at the moment, we've got a very negative NAO, which is symbolic of blocking in the Atlantic, and why we're seeing a northerly sort of flow at the moment. And you can see we've had a sort of negative NAO for quite a long period of time now. The only blip we had really was towards the middle of December, where we had a little bit of a positive NAO, where we had a bit more milder temperatures. But generally, with a negative NAO, it's colder, and it looks like it's going to be sustained negative NAO until at least the middle of January. Now, that's not definite cold, but it's one of the sort of the parameters we need to get colder northerly or easterly winds. Now, the index doesn't drive anything, however, it does. It just reflects what the computer models are showing. Secondly, we'll have a look at the AO. And that's very negative at the moment, so showing a lot of blocking over the Arctic. It's going maybe down to -6, which is almost off the charts for negative NAO, for the negative AO. So big blocking, so it's going to be displacing cold air. Just where it goes, I don't really know at the moment. It does look like there's potential for colder air to seep into Scandinavia in about a week or 10 days' time. And that's something we'll be looking at in the models in a minute. But it just shows you that even though we're not particularly cold at the moment, we are quite cold, but not bitterly cold, and not everywhere seeing widespread snowfall. And it's only really localised at the moment. We're going to remain in this pattern for the next week to 10 days at least. And then with the Sudden Stratospheric Warming, which I'm going to be looking at the end of the video, we could be looking at sustained blocking and colder than average temperatures for the next couple of weeks to maybe even a month. So it's just something we need to keep an eye on going forward. And I'm pretty sure that most of us will see a decent cold spell coming up. Whether we see snow or not is still debatable, but I think it's quite likely that we will see we'll see some wintry conditions. Just how cold it's going to get is the deciding factor at the moment. As we move through, we're going to have a look at the GFS 6 o'clock run. Now, the GFS has been very volatile over the last day or two, with about 7 to 10 days out. It's gone very up and down, considering what sort of pressure pattern it's showing, and we'll run through it now. But as you see, currently we've got high pressure on the Atlantic, that's the negative NAO, and we've got blocking towards the Arctic, that's the negative AO. Now it's plunging this this sort of trough low pressure down through Scandinavia and Europe. Now it's got really cold air in it, that's why it's quite cold at the moment. But we're going to start to build that high pressure towards Scandinavia, and we're going to start to pull in an easterly wind. Now, I did say yesterday there's a chance, so there was a decent chance we're going to be pulling in quite cold air with this. We are going to be pulling relatively cold air with this. However, if you follow the isobars back, they actually come from more southeastern parts of Europe, where it's a bit milder, actually. So if you're looking at 850 HPA temperatures, it's quite cold here, but we're drawing up quite mild air, in fact. So what's that's kind of done is that means on the surface it's not going to be quite as cold as you'd imagine with these upper airs. Instead of being maybe 1 or 2 degrees, it's going to be more like 3 or 4 degrees. The dew points are going to be around 1 or 2 degrees instead of freezing or below freezing. And that's something that was highlighted on the 10-day trend yesterday by the Met Office, which is something you should watch if you haven't seen it already. It's a very insightful video. They're not particularly bold in whatever they say, because they can't be, just typically because whatever they say will be amplified by the media, etc. So if they said very cold temperatures were coming up, you'd get the Express or someone coming out saying a weather bomb coming along or something. But they did state that that's one of the reasons why, even though there's a quite brisk and cold easterly wind, it's going to feel very cold underneath this easterly wind. It's not actually going to be particularly cold on the surface. It's going to be maybe 2, 3, 4 degrees, maybe 1 or 2 at night, with a chance of maybe some sleet and snow over higher ground, but generally rain to lower areas. So unfortunately, that looks like any cold easterly streamers, snowfall will not be happening at the moment. as we move beyond this period, I'll go back to the pressure patterns. It does start to become a bit more interesting as we start to see a split in the high pressure. A lobe of high pressure goes towards Scandinavia. A lobe of high pressure goes up more into the North Atlantic, back towards Greenland. Now, we're seeing this in all the models, and I'll show you the ECMWF and the GM after this. We see this area of low pressure plunge southwards. Now, this area of low pressure actually does have quite a lot of cold air in it. We've already got quite a reasonable amount of cold air around the UK. So this could provide a snow event. There is a bit of a warm sector, or milder sector there, you can see that there. It doesn't look particularly mild, but the dew points would be above freezing, so it will probably just be cold rain on those weather fronts at the moment. And we could get an undercut, and that's something we have to look at much nearer the time. But it does look like a common consensus that this low pressure is going to plunge south again. But what happens from here is not particularly known. We do start to pull in quite a cold easterly wind, however, again, it's originating from further south and southeastwards. So again, we are pulling in chilly air, but again, there's milder air underneath that. So it could be another situation like we're going to have on Monday, Tuesday, where it's going to be cold, but not bitterly cold, and not quite cold enough for snow. And this is where the GFS has gone quite volatile, as it's got various areas of low pressure, high pressure around. But again, we end up in a milder flow with high pressure toppling over the country and sort of the westerlies winning out, even though we've got two big areas of blocking, one over towards northern Canada and Greenland and one over Scandinavia. It's pretty weird to see this sort of pattern, and I don't really expect this to come off, just considering how volatile the GFS is at the moment. And then you start to see it ridged over the UK in a massive area of high pressure builds. I don't know if this is going to come off, and it goes very, very mild with that, but bitterly cold just to our north. So again, it might just be the GFS, toying with us, But it's probably the most unreliable model. Better models are the GM, the ECMWF, and we'll have a look at that now. So the GM has quite cold conditions, very similar to the GFS, and it has those sort of southeasterly winds, unfortunately. We just kind of want it to tap into this colder air further north, but it's not quite doing that. And then we have that area of low pressure that just plunge southwards. And you see, if we have a look at the upper airs, it's much colder in there. That would be providing quite a lot of snow, but behind the initial weather fronts, which are clearing through France right now. And as we go towards the end of the run, high pressure builds to our north, and we start to pull in quite a cold northeasterly wind, and there's quite a lot of cold air there. And you see that cold air is originating from Siberia, Scandinavia, Svalbard, and you see area of high pressure there. And we are pulling in a pretty cold, bitterly cold easterly wind. And you run that on another day or two, and you might start to see these minus 10, minus 15 ice firm getting closer to the UK. So that would be very cold there. And it does look like, although it doesn't look like it's locked in, it does look reasonably sustained, as there's not a lot of energy coming in off the Atlantic, and this area of high pressure is pushing up to connect with this sort of lobe of the Siberian high, or Scandinavian high, whatever you want to call it. So again, similar to the GFS, to around day 7, day 8, before they diverge. Now, the GM is actually backed up by the ECMWF, interestingly. If we have a look at the ECMWF, we build that area of high pressure to our north, pull in those southeasterly winds, and then that low pressure dives through the country. Again, it contains quite a lot of cold air, and already the Scandinavian high is starting to pull in the colder air from Siberia. So we've got quite a lot of decently cold air just to our northeast in a week's time. So that's one very important thing, even though the synoptics might be not exactly right for bitterly cold temperatures. We've got a lot more cold air near us, so just even a temporary easterly could be providing some snowfall. Beyond that, you start to see very similar conditions to the GM, slightly less of a northeasterly, more of a straight easterly, and we've got more high pressure ridging towards Greenland, and this is kind of a bit like the GM run on another day or two with the high pressure building to our north. We're pulling in a bitterly cold easterly wind. You would say if you follow those isopods all the way back, we are pulling up generally milder air from the backside of Europe. However, if you actually look at it again, it's kind of mixed, and if there's a lot more cold air towards Eastern Europe. So although it's coming from a milder direction right at the back back end of this area of low pressure. Before that, we're actually tapping into much colder air, and if you have a look at the blocking, it's quite likely that this sort of cold low there will be drawn in. So it does look like a much colder easterly wind there, and that would be driving in significant snow showers. And if you have a look at the 858 temperature deviation, you can see very cold air streaming all the way from Siberia, or not at the moment, but would be streaming in from Siberia if this area of high pressure to our north sustained. Now, lastly, we'll have a look at the London 858 temperatures. We'll firstly have a look at the midnight run. As I'm recording this at the time of the 6 o'clock isn't completely out yet. If we have a look at the midnight run, you can see sustained quite cold conditions, and then it goes quite volatile on the GFS ensembles. Got a lot of ensemble members going quite cold. -7, -8 and below is quite cold and would bring quite widespread snowfall. And then others going above the mean. Generally, it's well below the mean, but a lot of precipitation spikes and quite cold conditions could provide some snow. If you look at the snow image, quite a few members are cropping up with significant snowfall in around 7, 8, 9 days' time. Again, quite a few little snow spikes for Monday, Tuesday, so that we could be seeing maybe some temporary snowfall, maybe one of the nights, just as the dew points drop just enough. So maybe seeing some snowfall there. Actually, it's just switched to the 6 o'clock run. So that's the 6 o'clock run. The midnight run is very similar, actually. So, yeah. If we go to the 6 o'clock run again, we'll have a look at the HVA temperatures, see if they've updated. Well, they updated to the 13th, so about 14 days. And you can see it's actually trended colder. Much colder in the sustained future, so 8th, 9th, 10th is remaining very cold. Not many ensemble members going bitterly cold yet, but again, we don't need -10 to necessarily bring very cold conditions. If we have sustained -5, -6, -7 degrees, we can generate our own surface cold. Just generally, you want the -10 just to be bitterly cold to guarantee any snowfall, really. But beyond that, maybe a slight rise in temperature. But again, we've been seeing that at the end of the ensembles for the last week or so. But none of them have come off, really, as they try and break out of the blocking. But it does look like at the moment we can remain fairly blocked, with the Sudden Stratospheric Warming event happening. Currently forecast around the 6th, 7th of January. It's underway now, but it looks like it's going to become an official Sudden Stratospheric Warming on the 6th of January. We could be looking at 10 to 14 days beyond that. So maybe 15th, 16th, 17th of January, we could start to be seeing the effects of that. Now, lastly, we'll have a look at the Sudden Stratospheric Warming that's happening right now. And why I say it's happening is because we've got the warming, it's just entering the Arctic, and it won't take hold until maybe the 5th or 6th. So if we have a look at the Sudden Stratospheric Warming, it's pushing in, and the polar vortex is still reasonably strong, but it's being attacked by this warming, and this warming is making its way, and the North Pole is right there, right on this divide, or where the recording is, right on the North Pole, and where the Sudden Stratospheric Warming will be defined from, is right there where we've got the dividing line, so it's already starting to warm up, even by tomorrow. It does take a bit of time to get into the North Pole, but you can see that it does, and by sort of the 3rd, 4th, and then 4th, 5th, we start to see a split of the polar vortex. Did look like many are forecasting a displacement at the moment, but this GFS one is showing a split. Doesn't fully split yet, and you see by Monday, 4th, 5th, we start to see those much warmer temperatures reach the North Pole, and no, it takes another day or two for the zonal winds to reverse, and that's why on the 6th, 5th, 6th, we're seeing the Sudden Stratospheric Warming being is forecast to actually happen. It doesn't fully split the polar vortex there, unfortunately. That would provide more of probably provide a better potential blocking, as that not only pushes the colder out, but splits it apart. So it would mean we've got more of a chance of getting colder air. But beyond that, the warming stays, and the polar vortex doesn't really recover. And I've been seeing this cropping up a lot on the models lately. We do see a bit of recovery, but then we see a second warming, which I've been seeing a lot coming up. And potentially it starts to split the polar vortex come under the 11th, maybe 12th. So a secondary attack, and if we have a look at the end of this run, we do see a full split of the of the polar vortex. You can see those green colours disappearing. We'd hopefully see some orange colours going between that, and that would, and we start to see some orange colours going between it, which does indicate a complete and utter split. And as we end the run, we just need to get right to the end of the run. You can see the polar vortex is obliterated, completely obliterated, which would be good for any sustained cold temperatures. Now we'll also have a look at the zonal mean winds at 10 HPA. So this is what's defined as a sudden stratospheric warming, because the warming moves the air of high pressure and it reverses the winds from a sort of west to east to an east to west. So that's why we get zonal winds coming off the Atlantic, following sort of polar vortex pattern. Now we can see that generally we should be around the strongest at this time of year, around 35-40 meters per second. However, we're dropping down potentially to minus 30, minus 20, and most ensemble members are going for a reversal of the zonal winds, which is very important, and that defines the sudden stratospheric warming. And you see, even on some of the GFS members, it's going for record sudden stratospheric warming. You can see the sudden stratospheric warming is happening here, and that was the beast from the east. Remember, these ones right here. So, again, it just shows you what could be happening with the sudden stratospheric warming. So, very interesting conditions to come up. But anyway, very interesting couple of weeks coming up for any cold weather fans out there. Nothing mild on the cards yet, but something, anything bitterly cold guaranteed yet. But it's looking increasingly likely we're going to be seeing a colder than average January, maybe even potentially significantly colder than average January, with potential for some very significant wintry conditions, something we haven't seen in many, many years. But again, it's only potential at the moment. Nothing is confirmed yet. But anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to me, and I'll see you again for another video soon.